This is the 6th lesson in a series of 8 lessons on techniques for creative living. And I especially like the subject that we're dealing with tonight. I've entitled this class, How to Teach Other People How to Treat You. Now, at first hand you think, well, that's a ridiculous subject. How to teach other people how to treat me. They know how to treat me. No, they don't. You see, we have a false assumption. We believe that everyone grows up knowing how to treat everyone else. And none of us grow up knowing how to treat anybody. Because no one ever told us. We just grew up, for the most part. We learned how to sew and knit and boil an egg and drive an automobile, how to do strange things like that. But no one ever taught us how to live. They simply didn't, because they did not know. And it's really strange how people treat each other. For the most part, we treat other people exactly the way that we do not want to be treated ourselves. And think nothing of it. As a matter of fact, we don't even know that we're doing it most of the time. They know that we're doing it, but we don't. We live in a universe of irrevocable law that cannot be broken. And all problems that have occurred in the life of the human race from the beginning of time is the result of going against that law. All solutions are the result of discovering the law and working with it. It's that simple. It's that simple. And the great religious figures of all times have understood this and have tried to teach their understanding to lesser people who have taken their understanding and called it religion when it was not religion at all. It was simply how to live your life and be successful and happy and joyous in the process, and also how to, in this experience, to discover and establish a conscious contact with the spirit of the universe so that you and that spirit become one, a unity. And that's what we're talking about tonight. And the greatest of all these teachers of the law, and of course he was the law, he was more than just a teacher of it, was Jesus the Christ. And one day one of the scribes came up and heard them disputing with one another, and seeing that he answered them well, that was the people around him, asked him, which commandment is the first of all? Meaning, which is the most important of the commandments? Which law, if I practice it, will give me the most immediate and the most far-reaching results? And Jesus answered, the first is, now hear this, O Israel, all of you, listen to it. The Lord our God is the Lord is one. There's only one God, but more than that, God is a perfect unity. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Meaning, as you love yourself is also the way you will love your neighbor. And if you don't like yourself very much, then your neighbor's going to have a hard time. There is no other commandment greater than these. And this young man understood it immediately and repeated what Jesus had said, and Jesus said, you have answered wisely. You are not far from the kingdom of God. You are not far from your own Christ consciousness. Most people actually believe that the golden rule was invented by Jesus Christ, and it wasn't. As a matter of fact, he picked up on the golden rule from his Hebrew heritage and added not a jot or a tittle to it, except he demonstrated it in practice in his life. And that rule, as he expressed it, was, so, whatever you wish that men would do to you, do so to them, for this is the law and the prophets, meaning this is the law, and there's nothing else you can say about it. Now, the Old Testament of the Jews said this: what is hurtful to yourself, do not to your fellow man. That is the whole of the Torah, and the remainder is but commentary. Buddhism put it more briefly: hurt not others with that which pains you. Islam: no one of you is a believer until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. And Hinduism: this is the sum of duty: do naught to others which, if done to thee, would cause thee pain. Simple, isn't it? Whatever you would like for people to do to you, do exactly the same thing to them. Treat other people the way you wish to be treated. And it can also be converted to read, as you give to life, so shall it be given back to you. Now, at the level of the universe, at the level of God, at the level of spirit, we know for sure that the universe takes us at our word, meaning not only the word that we speak, but also the word of our action. We are judged not by what we say, but by what we do. What you and I say to each other is not important if we immediately go out and reverse that by our actions. It is what we are always doing. It's a universe of action. This is a dynamic universe, and your actions, how you actually live today, is what you believe. Not what you say you believe, but how you have been living your experience. Now, since this is a universe of action, and the law is the law of action, the law says, do so to them. What you would have them do to you, do to them. However it is that you would like to be treated, the law does not say, sit down and talk about it to the people in your life, meaning, let's communicate. I really want a special kind of reaction or understanding or behavior for you, so let's sit down now and we'll talk about an hour and a half about how I want you to treat me. Did you ever try it? People do not hear what you say until we first get their attention with what we do. If you are an action person, people will hear you. But if you're just a talker, a speaker only, they will not. In his book, Pulling Your Own Strings, Dr. Wayne Dyer says, most people are nicer to total strangers than they are to their loved ones and to themselves. And it's true. Unfortunately, it's true. In your life, have you noticed how some of the most important people that you've known, people that you've been close to for years, family, and have been devoted to, have given your all, have frequently been so nice that to strangers that they thought that honey wouldn't melt in their mouth, and you just sat there aghast, knowing what was done to you a half hour ago. Take a look at your life and see how it is that you are treated by people. Not just by one person, but through the course of a day, a week, a month. How does the world treat you? It's important now. It is very important that you become aware of how the world treats you, and especially how people who are close to you in your life conduct their business with you. For example, do people make plans without asking you, just assuming that you will go along? You're with 3 or 4 people and they're going out to a restaurant and they decide where they're going to eat, knowing that you're just going to tag along because you just tag along. Do you frequently feel left out, ignored, or even abused by how other people think and behave in your presence? Then ask yourself, why have you permitted or even encouraged this unacceptable behavior of other people that disturbs you and limits your life? You see, if you don't make yourself responsible for how you're treated, you will continue to be powerless to do anything about it as long as you believe that the treatment that you receive from other people comes from them and not from you, then you have no recourse. But the moment you assume full responsibility, some remarkable possibilities begin to open up. Now, this is a strange concept to the human intellect. You see, you and I have taught other people how to treat us on the basis of what we will tolerate or put up with from them. And if you simply take it, and have been taking it for a long time, then you send out the message that you will not resist very much when they continue to give you what you have trained them to believe that you want. Now, this is not a very complicated theory. You can observe it in your own life. But it's important that you begin to examine and to observe and see how it is that people conduct themselves when they are in your presence, as well as how it is that you conduct yourself when you're in their presence. You see, tonight we're going to talk about a part of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, that you've never heard about in your whole life. You see, we have always assumed that if we're nice to other people, that they will be nice to us, right? Wrong. Doesn't work that way. How many times have you seen this nice little girl who was always so kind to her brother, and she fixed him peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and he came up to get the peanut butter and jelly sandwich and hit her on the arm, and there was another bruise, and he pushed her down the stairs and punched her nose and put the pillow over her head, and she grew up being nice to her brother, who kept doing what she was training him to do to her. Well, the law says that it's very important that you continue to be nice to people and that you love them, but that somewhere along the way, if they do not treat you the way that you want them to treat you, then you go into action. You go into action. And this action is one of the most exciting experiences that can happen in your life, because you're going to train them. You're going to teach them how to treat you. Okay? I must tell you that after the class today, in the afternoon, one lady came up to me and said, "What can I do about my daughter-in-law?" And I said, "Nothing. She's out of your domain. It has to be someone who falls within the realm of your personal responsibility." This lesson is not designed to teach us how to go out and change the world. I'm talking about out there. It's how to change our world, the one that we live in, and the one in that world of people that we must associate with. More than 5 years ago, Mary Ann, we'll call her, came to me because she felt mercilessly controlled by her dominant husband. She complained of being a doormat for all of his abusive language and tactics of manipulation. And she said that he had really been bad when they were married, but it was even worse now that they were divorced and he had remarried. So much depended upon his continued support. And although he had a responsible position in the community, and everyone else, including the judge, just thought he was such a nice person, and he was, except when it came to Mary Ann. All she ever got from him were words that diminished her spirit, actions that confused her and threatened her, and if she got any money from him, it was just by coincidence. It was what happened to be left over that month, and that usually wasn't very much. Now, Mary Ann was also the mother of 4 children, none of whom showed her much respect. And when she came here, she was at her rope's end with depression and hopelessness. And each of her children were developing problems in their lives, and in each case, the situation with that child became worse. As she told me about her past, I heard a classic case of someone who had been permitting herself to be victimized since childhood. All that she had ever known was being told what to do and how to do it and when to do it, and suffering in silence because no one would listen to her. No one ever listened to her. But never had she required or taken the kind of action that would require someone to listen to her. I pointed out to Mary Ann that she had carefully taught people to treat her that way, and that it was not their fault at all, even though she was very fond of blaming them and everyone else for her misery. Now, Mary Ann did not stay around here very long. She told me that I was wrong and that all she needed was a good job and a better husband, and everything would be all right. And so she got the job and lost it, and another job and another job. A year later, I ran into her, and she was with her new fiancé, and she called me the next day to tell me how happy they were, and they were married. And 6 months later, she called to tell me that he was worse than her first husband, and that his children were treating her worse than her own children were treating her. And her own children were failing in school and in life, and they'd been forced to go and live with their father. But by now, Mary Ann was so desperate that her ears were opened, and she could admit that she had been victimizing herself by taking all that abuse for all those years and never looking for effective ways to stop the way that people were treating her. As a matter of fact, she did not know that she could change it, nor did she know that she should change it. She did not know that she had a responsibility in this matter at all. She kept hoping that they would be different. Have you ever hoped that someone would be different? And hoped and hoped and hoped? Well, once she had gained this insight that it really was her responsibility to look inward rather than outward for answers to her problems, then counseling and these classes helped her to learn new ways of teaching people how to conduct their business with her. And I tell you that working with her became an exciting experience, because we would plan a strategy, and she would go charging out that door to execute it. And her life has been changing dramatically ever since, to the degree that she has required by her actions a different response from every person who lives in this world with her. I can tell you this, that she's single. She has a steady job now. Once about, maybe 3 years ago, she had one of her children and 2 of his friends arrested for smoking pot. They'd been smoking pot, and she asked them not to smoke pot, and she asked them, and one day we talked about it, and I said, well, why don't you tell them? And then tell them what you're going to do if they don't quit. And she did, and they didn't even hear her until someone knocked on the front door with a blue uniform on, and they took them off. Her own son? You bet. She had a 15-year-old daughter placed in a foster home temporarily until the daughter would accept psychiatric counseling and agree to live by the rules that Mary Ann had laid down for the family. When I tell you that Mary Ann went into action with tough love to teach others how to conduct themselves around her, you can believe it. And the changes have just been absolutely remarkable. Now, in his book, Pulling Your Own Strings, Dr. Dyer calls it the karate chop theory. I've always called it tough love. But it's the same thing, really. Now, I'm going to use a paragraph or two from his book, and I would like for you to think of a person or persons in your life. Someone, it can be a parent, a sibling, a child, a spouse, or a friend, a mother-in-law. Let's change that. I don't want to pick on mothers-in-laws. They're usually nice people. A person, someone who has bullied you, badgered you, diminished you, someone who has not treated you very kindly, even though you believe that you have, at least most of the time, given that person the very best that you have had to offer. Okay? Do you have your example? Now, I want you to think back to the very first time that this person started doing whatever it was that they became accustomed to doing to you, whether it was raising their voice, getting angry, hitting you, or whatever it was. Or in the case of a child, your child, controlling you with a fit of anger, or just a fit. Do you know the kind I'm talking about? Whenever it happened to you the first time, I'm sure you were surprised. How could this possibly happen to a nice person like me? And how could it happen from this nice person? Suppose that instead of being shocked or stunned or afraid or tearful in that moment. Now, you're back in the situation. I want you to go back and be there. Suppose that you had shown this person your hand, and you had told him that this was a registered weapon. And given him a solid karate chop to the stomach, followed up with, I don't intend to take that kind of abuse from you. I think of myself as a person with dignity, and I'm not ever going to be shoved around by you or by anyone else. Now, please give yourself a heavy dose of second thoughts before you try something like that on me again, because this will come and get you. That's all I have to say about it. No argument, no discussion. And then you proceeded to carry on a very intelligent, meaningful conversation with this person. Now, this may appear to you to be an absurd thing to imagine, but it illustrates the point. Had you reacted from strength at that first incident, and with a firm intolerance, not anger, not depression, but you're just saying, I simply will not put up with this at all. This is unacceptable behavior, and unacceptable means exactly that. I will not accept it. And you'll pay the price if you do it again. If you had done that, that person would never have indulged their nasty behavior for 1 second in your life from that moment to this. I promise you. But your reaction was probably disastrously different. Whether you cried or acted hurt or insulted or showed fear, you sent out a signal to that person that you would not necessarily like the way that you were being treated, but that you would take it, and even more significantly, that you would let yourself be manipulated emotionally by it. You were saying, you were giving them a system that would work, a control measure, that for the rest of your experience with them, they could keep doing this over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, they could improvise and perfect their system at your expense. Well, when Mary Ann saw how it was, her children soon learned that Mom was not going to be the sweet little victim anymore. Not because she cried and yelled a lot, because she stopped crying and she stopped yelling at them. She very quietly told them what, what the reaction was going to be. She said, I'm going to tell you one time. And the first time they didn't believe it. But in a little while they started pricking up their ears, because everything she told them she meant. And every promise that she gave them, she carried out. And you would just be amazed at what happened. You teach people with behavior, not with words. And whatever you wish that people will do to you, do whatever it takes to get them to do it. That's the golden rule. Now, all the while that you're doing it, be nice to them. Literally. Take them to lunch. Do all those things that you are responsible for in their lives. Fulfill your responsibilities to them while you absolutely require that they fulfill their responsibilities to you. And this is the law and the prophet. If this magnificent spirit that is your self requires that you begin to treat it with dignity, then does it not also require that you begin to make call upon others to treat you that very same way? You can't take it for granted that people know how to treat you, because they don't. They never learned how to treat you. And as a matter of fact, they did learn to treat you this way because you taught them. You taught them that you were a patsy. Now, if you don't wish them to treat you that way, then take some action right now to make them wish they had. Okay? I believe with all my heart that all counseling and all therapy should be an experience which teaches new behaviors and discourages meaningless talk. There are people who have been in counseling for years, and they sit and talk a lot. And they come back and they talk some more. And they talk about their bad experiences. Well, if you just tell someone how bad you feel and that person gives you nothing more than a lot of empathy and support, then you become a double victim. You get it on one hand from the world, and then you come and get it from the person that's trying to help you overcome the world. And what you need is a course of action. The most effective teacher in the world is behavior. action which demonstrates your resolve is worth a million well-intended words. Would you agree? And all that you can prove to another person is by your action. Watch young children and see how they deal with bullies. A bully will intimidate 9 out of 10 smaller children. And each one of those victims will plead and cry, and you school teachers see it all the time. And they'll yell or complain to the teacher or to some larger person. They'll be afraid to go to school. But then let a 10th child, even though he may be a smaller child, haul off and let the bully have it. Now, that small child might get thumped one time. But the next time the bully walks down the hallway and he sees that one that thumped him, he will say, he's the one that kicks back. I think I will walk by him and go find another victim. Okay? I'll leave him alone, and the next time I'll pick on somebody who will take it. Behavior is the only way to teach others not to bully you. And there are all kinds of bullies on this earth, not just physical ones, but people who will take advantage of you emotionally and psychologically and every other way. And they won't even know that they're doing it. They learned it, and this is the way they treat their friends. Now, strangers, they have a whole different code of ethics for. Forget all those fancy words and promises when it comes to people that push you around in any way. Two of the most popular words of this generation are communication and dialogue, right? Meaning, let's you and I reach a point of mutual understanding and agreement by talking about it. Let's sit down here and we'll talk for about 3 hours. We'll communicate. That's fine, and it's important, and I'm not saying that it is not important. It is important that we talk to each other. But remember that people do not hear what you say unless you are willing to back it up with your actions, and you know that. You know it both ways. You know that you really don't hear what some people say because they never do anything about it. Talk, talk, talk. Talk, 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 talk. Talk, 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 talk. Talk, talk. Let's talk some more. Let's talk about it. Let's communicate. You can communicate yourself to death, and there's some people that will not hear it. The word communicate means to make known, to impart, to transmit, to interchange. The exchange of thoughts, messages, or the like, as by speech, yes, signals or writing. And let me tell you, friends, there's some powerful signals that you can send to people by your actions. And we must give them. A good example of this is the way this generation has taught its children to victimize the whole family by dominating the family life with surges of unacceptable behavior. We've actually taught our children. We've trained them that their unacceptable behavior will get them the rewards that they want. That if they want something bad enough, all they have to do is kick or squeal or thump or cry or display a bad disposition. And depending upon the prize, they will get it. You've seen it happen many times. So frequently when I'm dining out, and it happened not long ago, I noticed 2 young parents with 3 small children in a booth near us in a restaurant. And the mother was the moderator of the debate between the children. She had them seated apart, but they would not remain apart, and the one that was the aggressor for the moment would do something to the one that was passive for the moment, and then the one who was passive would turn to the mother and say, "Did you see what Billy did?" And then in a few moments it would be the other way around. And in a little while, Mommy said, "Why don't you tell your father?" And Billy said, "I did, but he didn't care. He said to take it up with you." He never becomes involved with this. Do you know that dialogues like this can go on forever as each child reports and gets its attention for the moment, and then but it never changes? I told you the story once of the child I saw in the supermarket. And there was a tall stack of peas, canned peas. And the mother was saying to little Billy, "Now don't touch those peas." He did not hear her. He was 5 years old. He had not heard her for 4.5 years. You know why? Because all she ever did was talk. He never experienced the consequences of his actions. And she said, now, Billy, I told you to not play with those peas. And in a few moments, he grabbed the right can, and the whole stack came down, and there were cans of peas rolling all over the floor. And she said, Billy, I told you not to do that. And they walked right away into the next apartment, and he was off to some other experiment. I told you not to do that. What did that mean, I told you not to do that? There are 100 ways that you can teach a child by your actions, and they will not hear your words until you go into action. Many people assume that being assertive, and that's another one of the words in this season of our lives, assertive, that this means being unpleasant or deliberately offensive. But it doesn't. It means, of course, making bold, confident declarations in defense of your rights and willing to go into action to defend or protect yourself. All winners, all great goal achievers are people who are unafraid to take the risk of standing up and insisting upon their rights when they're threatened. And I promise you that if you've made major goals, if you set major goals at this season of your life, if you've decided that you want changes in your life, you are going to run up against some barriers, some people, and some conditions that will try to stop you. And if you're stoppable, you'll be stopped. If you're not willing to stand up and be counted. If you want to be a winner, it means that you're going to have to learn to fight your internal fears. You are. You're going to have to face the people and the conditions that will come to attack you. Now, this doesn't mean that we're all brave, but it means that that it's important to become firm and unwilling to back off in the face of the condition that will always stand you in the eye and stare at you until you back down. And the more you avoid assertive behavior, the more that you teach the world that you want to be its victim, and it will take you at your word. I'll use this example because she's here tonight, but you will not know who it is. She will. Some time ago, he decided one day when he was walking through Eastland or one of the shopping centers. You know how you walk by one of those pet shops and the pets are so cuddly and wonderful and your imagination sort of runs wild, and they did not have a pet, had not had one for some time, and he decided that they needed a pet. Well, he had decided that before, and it had been a disaster for her. And so he came home all excited about their new pet. But she had made up her mind that this was not her pet, it was his. And she told him that she had decided that she did not want another pet, and that if he would like to keep it around the house, that he certainly would be willing to clean up after the little puppy dog. And he smiled, and he knew that she always cleaned up. 2 days later, he gave the pet away. And then went around and cleaned up. That was a strong statement, wasn't it? Do you know that, can you imagine the fear that was in her to assert herself at that point? She decided that she did not want to have that experience anymore and was willing to take the action to prove it. Everybody that has ever stopped drinking, every person who has had a drinking problem, an alcoholic, knows that in the hour that you make the decision to take your last drink, that in the hours and days that follow, you will be attacked, besieged by your, quote, friends, unquote, who will absolutely try to overpower you with the act of taking another drink. And so, if you decide to go to any lengths to change your life, whether it be to stop drinking or whatever choice that you might make, you must be prepared to face those well-meaning people who will do their very best to try to keep you from doing that which you have committed yourself to do. It's a principle in life. A friend of mine who lives in a distant city is a person that other people have decided all the days of her adult life that she was going to take care of them or someone else. Have you ever seen anyone like that? She's the one who takes care of everybody. Not by her own choice. She never has to make the choice. They, quote, are always deciding who the next person is that she's going to take care of. Now, this is a true story. Her brother is presently experiencing an advanced case of cancer. And both her brother and his wife are alcoholics. Now, everyone has decided that she's the one that needs to take care of her brother. She's the one that needs to be on call. Not only that, but the brother and his wife have an adopted son who is about 10 years of age. And my friend is long past the time that she needs a 10-year-old son as a child. But they have decided that it would be nice if she took the child to raise. She has already taken the whole family to raise, including her mother. Well, who is it that must say, that must speak the word in that situation? Who is it that's going to say, not this time? Because until you and I become willing to take our stand and to take our position, well-meaning people will always be deciding that which you and I are going to do. Well, they've always decided for us, haven't they? And they don't even know that we do not have the right to decide for ourselves what our experience shall be. And it's shocking to them when they begin to discover, and they will look at you and say, how can you possibly do this to me? When you've not done anything at all to them, you have merely said, I will not be party to this assassination of my spirit. It's as simple as that. It's not being mean or angry or violent. It's really looking at your life and establishing what your priorities are, not just from your intellect, but working with the Spirit of God, asking for help and for guidance. Now, during this class, you have become aware of an area in your life of one or more relationships or conditions or circumstances in which you have been overpowered by the strong, dominating personality of another person. Right? If you would like to change it, you must develop your strategy for teaching that person or those people how you want to be treated from this moment forward. Because they don't know how to treat you. Correction, they do. You have caused them to believe that this is the way you want to be treated. And they don't know otherwise. And they cannot change until you apply the new golden rule to them. Until you're willing to go into action to cause them to begin to treat you in another way. And I would suggest that you write down a code of ethics for yourself, which you can work out very quietly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the things that you're going to do with this person or in this situation. Now, do not discuss this code of ethics with the person that's involved, because if you do, all you get is an argument. You'll be talk, 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 talk. And talking won't do it. You're going to have to go into action. And in the next few hours, the next few days, I want you to practice reacting as much as possible with behavior instead of words. I want you to think about your new course of action, how you're going to do it, how you're going to carry it off, and how you're going to shock the people that are doing this to you. In all of my life, I have never seen one person change until they experience a conscious shock. If you don't shock somebody, they're not going to hear you, especially the person that you have in mind. Do you agree? Let me give an example. If someone in your house shirks his responsibilities, and your usual tendency is to complain, but to do the job yourself, remember that you have taught that person to act that way. So the next time, teach him something different. For example, if your son is supposed to empty the garbage and doesn't, remind him one time. If he ignores it, give him a deadline. If he ignores the deadline, then calmly empty the garbage can into his bed. Now, I guarantee you that one bed emptying exercise will do more to teach him that you mean business than all the meaningless words that have got you nothing but upset. And explain to him very carefully that the next time the same thing will happen. And it will always be that way. If you've got a daughter who never picks up, and you've been saying, Mary Sue just never picks up. She just always leaves things, and I have to go around picking up, and you're going around picking up and complaining, stop it. Tell her, explain very carefully, that henceforth she will have to pick up. And give her a deadline, and if she doesn't do it, then the next time that she comes home, let her find every garment that she possesses there on top of those things that she did not pick up, every last thread that she owns, from the closet and from all of the drawers, and go down and look in the washing machine. If there's anything there, put it right on top of it. And she does not leave until it's picked up. And explain very carefully that the next time it happens, that this very same thing will occur. I promise you that you will be heard. You will get someone's attention in your life. Stop using sentences that permit other people to put you down. Like, I'm not very important. I'm not really that smart. I'm no good at figures. I never understand legal matters. Or I'm not too well coordinated. You know all those things that we have said that if other people look at us and nod and say, that's right, you really aren't. And something else, if you begin to go into action, that there are people who have been controlling you all of your life who will try to control you yet through fear and guilt. Do not feel guilty about the action that you take, because you have a right. As a matter of fact, you have a responsibility to take charge of your spirit. My beautiful friend, we've been talking about a spiritual matter here. To thine own self be true, and then it follows as night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. Shakespeare wrote. Thine own self. Your individuality. Your soul. Your spirit, capital S. That eternal self that you are. You've reached the point in your life that you've become willing to go to any lengths to make major changes in your behavior. Is that correct? You've made a commitment in the spiritual life that from this moment forward you will always treat others as you would like to be treated. You will share with them your love, your energy. You give them your total support. Never again will you say anything that will put another person down, that will diminish or demean them. And if you should, then immediately you will correct it within your own mind, and you will turn to God and ask for forgiveness, and of course you will receive it, and if necessary you will go to that person and make your correction. Is that your attitude in life? Is it? Then if this is true, not only do you have the right, but you have the responsibility to require that every person on earth who lives with you in whatever kind of relationship, that person treats you with the same awareness, with the same dignity. Now, knowing full well that they have not yet learned to treat others that way, knowing, as Dyer said, that most people are nicer to total strangers than they are to their loved ones and to themselves, then you and I have a responsibility to teach them how to treat us. And that's not because we react with anger or violence. Putting the garbage in the middle of your son's bed is not a violent or angry thing. It's designed to create a conscious shock, and it will. And the next time it will create even more of a shock. Never place loyalty to institutions, to persons, or to things above loyalty to yourself. You see, the law is, and Jesus said it, you can only love your neighbor, you can only love your family, you can only love your friends to the extent that you love yourself, and you can only respect others to the extent that you require, actually demand that same respect. The universe takes you at your word, and so do your friends. And if you have not been receiving the respect that you require, it's because you have not demanded it. You've not caused it to happen. And my beautiful friend, if you'll go out into this week and go into action in some important relationship, it will become the most exciting and rewarding week of your entire life. I promise you it will. To thine own self be true, and then it follows this ninth day, thou canst not then be false to these beautiful people that we love. And that's the way it really is. God bless you.